everybody, and welcome to the Ultimate Job Search and Career Podcast. And I want to thank everybody listening because you, my friend, are awesome. You are taking the trouble to better yourself, to learn, and you are increasing your chances of getting a good job, and you are decreasing the amount of time it's going to take to do that. So way to go. I am Bill, the company's expert. I am your host for today, and today we are going to take two questions that were sent in from my awesome viewers/listeners. We're going to talk about how to negotiate salary and how to get flexible working hours. So let's jump right in. Now, the first question today is someone who's left a comment in one of my videos. Their name is Mr. Anderson. Mr. Anderson. That sounds like that movie, The Matrix, right? Mr. Anderson. I actually like those movies. I thought the second one was really good. I'm sure I'm swimming uphill on this one, but I really liked the second one. Did not like it the first time I saw it, but I saw it a couple more times after that, and it really grew on me. Fantastic movie. Anyway, let's get on with this. Mr. Anderson. Mr. Anderson writes, "What do I do if employers ask your current salary figure even before making an offer or before negotiations start? I am not comfortable with this behavior, but this seems to be the norm in the industry, that they ask for my compensation letter well in advance, even though I passed all their interview rounds. Please advise on this." Now, I had actually responded to Mr. Anderson. I sent my good friend Mr. Anderson a link to a video I had done, which was how to answer the salary question on a job application, okay? Because that's essentially what Mr. Anderson is asking for here. Usually, when companies solicit job applications, they put out a posted job ad and they want people to apply for it. What they do is they give you the option of applying online, and when you do so, one of the first things they ask you is, what are your salary expectations? And they do this on a web form. So you have to enter a number. You can't skip the question. You can't enter an invalid number. You can't enter a range. You have to give a number right at the very beginning of the process. Okay, now I had done a video on that. And long story short, in that video, I basically said that the entire reason that they're asking this question is not to try and satisfy your salary requirements. It's simply to eliminate you if you ask for too much money, okay? They have a threshold, and if you ask for more than that, they terminate your application right there and then. You don't go any further, okay? So that's the entire purpose of this. So in order to get past that, okay, you would want to put a low number. Now, there is an ethical dimension to this question, as well as a practical one. Should I lie and put an unreasonably low salary that I don't want just so I can get past this hurdle? Okay, there might be some practical problems with that. There might be some ethical problems with that. Practically, a lot of people fear that, okay, well, if I put too low an asking price for my salary, won't that make the entire rest of this process moot? Like, if they're going to select me, if they eventually do select me and offer me some ridiculously low amount of money that I would never accept anyway, what's the point? Wouldn't it be better to be eliminated here and now? That's a reasonable question. Actually, the answer is no, okay? I have explained this in multiple videos. It takes a bit of a long explanation, but once again, the bottom line is that what you need to do is get in front of them, have them look into the details of your situation and your talents and your abilities, see how great you are as a person and how much they'd want to work with you, have them fall in love with you and say, well, this is the candidate that we want to select. And then you say, you know what? The job's great, everything's great, but I'm going to need a little more money. And at that point, 98% of the time, people will say, okay, sure, fine. That's fine. We'll give you a little bit more money. There we go. Okay, if that means losing you or not. Okay. Now, in some cases, if they legitimately can't give you any more money, it's not that they won't, it's that they can't, then you find that out and you know that there's just no way to make it work. Okay. But at least you know that. You weren't eliminated because somebody else was cheaper. Okay. Now the ethical dimension to this question is, is it okay to lie? Well, this is what I would say. First of all, you're not lying. I'm not asking anyone to lie. I would never recommend that anybody lies. But what I am recommending people say is, usually when you're applying for the job, you really don't know a lot of the details, okay? And what I mean by that is that, yes, you know the details that they have disclosed in the job description. So they say, this is your job title, and you're going to be working in a warehouse, and you're going to be, managing inventory, right? But in the job descriptions, they won't give you critical information like, is your boss a jerk? What are the hours? How long is your lunch break? What benefits do you get? Things like this, things that are critical for you being able to give a salary expectation. Okay. They don't disclose any of that stuff at this stage of the operation. So what I would say is that imagine that all those details that are important that you don't know are amazing. Okay, it's a dream job. Everything that they haven't disclosed, just imagine it's the best case scenario. And then ask yourself, how much money would you need to do the job? Okay, let's say you're going to be working and your boss is, one of your idols. Okay, like, I don't know. I mean, just take it to an extreme and then ask yourself, how much money would you need to do that job? And that's the number you put in. It's probably going to be a really low amount of money. Okay. So it is not lying. It is simply giving, they demand that you give an answer when they themselves haven't given you full and complete information about the job. They haven't been transparent. They haven't given you all the information you would need to make an informed decision. So let's respond to that. Okay. You're not going to give an informed decision. You're going to give a number based on your imagination of the best case scenario for all the details they haven't disclosed. Okay, that's the way I would approach this question. Now, Mr. Anderson goes on in his question. Maybe I should just call him Neo. Okay, so Neo says, I really appreciate your kind response to this on this video, but I feel they pushed so hard on this point that I couldn't refrain anymore giving away my number. I feel disgusted when you clear all the rounds of interview and at the end, they waste your time with such obligatory stunts. Either they don't value their opponent or they want cheap laborers for building a rocket. This is Indian ecosystem we are talking about. Okay, yes, I am aware that, the culture of recruiting varies around the world. And in India, it has been widely reported that people want labor for rock bottom prices, and that's feedback I've heard from many people. Now here's the deal. Okay, I have done several videos basically explaining the standard response to what are your salary expectations in a job interview. Okay, it's different from how you would respond to that question on a job application. Okay, on a job application where you have to put a number and you can't avoid the question, then you would put the lowest number you'd accept, assuming that everything you don't know about the job is perfect. Okay, in an interview, it's a little bit different. You can say other things besides just a number. Okay, and it's a sort of three-part answer. If you haven't seen that video that I have for this called "What are your salary expectations?" Best answer. Basically, you start by avoiding the question. You say, well, if they're asking you this question at a very early stage, which means before they've given you a job offer, right? Your first answer should be, well, I don't really know enough of the details of this job yet to give you a fully informed answer on that at the moment. Okay, so you basically refuse to answer the question. You say, I don't know enough yet to give you a proper answer. Okay, now if that doesn't fly, and then, half of the time it will work, half of the time it doesn't, okay, they say, well, we really need you to give a number. Okay, then the next thing you do is you turn the question around to them. And so if they ask you, what are your salary expectations? You say, well, I know that this is an approved position. Okay, it's been approved. It's been posted publicly. You're recruiting for it. So therefore, the salary range for this position must have been approved in advance. So can I ask what it is? Right? So you turn the question around at them and say, what is the range for this position? And whatever they say to you, oh, it's from this number to this number, you say, sure, well, that works fine for me. Right? You're not tying yourself to a number. It's very important not to give a number. Okay. So number one, the first thing you say is you refuse to answer. You say, well, I don't really know enough yet to give you an accurate answer. If they push you, you say, well, what is the salary range for this position? If you could tell me that, that would be a step, to figuring this out. Okay. Now, a lot of times they will straight up lie to you and say, well, we don't know the salary range, and that 99% of the time, that's just a bold-faced lie because the range has been approved. Recruiters know the range. I mean, how can you recruit candidates if you don't know whether you're paying minimum wage or you're paying $1 million a year? I mean, it's ridiculous. Recruiters need to know the range to be able to make an informed decision on the candidates they bring in. Okay. But whatever, sometimes they say, well, we don't know the range or the range hasn't been approved, or they'll make up some cock and bull story, whatever they need to say to refuse to give you the range. And then they'll prompt you once again for you to give a number, and they'll put pressure on sometimes. Okay. And in fact, Mr. Anderson goes on here, our good buddy Neo/Mr. Anderson. He says, also, as advised by you, I requested them their approved salary range for this approved position. They straight away refrained, saying that the info is highly confidential and is against company rules. Then how do I know that you are valuing your new hire correctly? This is utter vandalism. Please enlighten me on this. So yes, Mr. Anderson, you are feeling the pressure. They're putting pressure on you. Now, before I go any further on the sort of way I recommend to answer this, I just want to explain, okay, you have free will. Just because somebody asks you a question doesn't mean you have to answer with the information they're looking for. If somebody comes up to you and says, what's your bank account number? You don't have to answer them. In fact, most people would advise you not to. Don't give your bank account number. That's confidential. That's not for these people to know. Right? Just because they ask you the question doesn't mean that you are obligated to answer them. And what they're going to do is they're going to create a situation where it seems like you have to give them this answer. Or there's something wrong with you, or you're the bad guy. You're the one that's refusing to cooperate by not giving them this piece of information that is reasonable and that everybody gives them. It's like, no, no, not at all. That's not how this works. Okay. So I understand, Mr. Anderson, that the pressure is on, okay? But always remember, you are in control of yourself, okay? Now, the easiest way to play this is not to say, I refuse to give you a number, okay? Like, you don't say, I have a number, but I'm not going to tell you. That's not usually the best way to do this. The best way to do it is to say, I can't. I don't know what my number is. I can't come up with a number because I don't know critical bits of information about the job. I'm sorry. I've had bad experiences in the past where people prompted me for a number early on, and I gave a number based on, what information I had, and it turned out to be a big mistake. Okay, so I'm sorry. I just can't give you that number, especially when you can't give me the range. If you could give me the range, we could maybe work for it, but, okay. So, you don't want to make a big deal of this. You don't want to really, put the screws to them, but you just want to say, look, I'm really sorry. I'd love to give you a number, but I just can't. This is rather vague at the moment. I don't know the hours. I don't know the compensate. I don't know the benefit package. I don't know the working conditions. I don't know exactly what's being asked of me, my duties. Will I have to be lifting anything? The list goes on. I would need to know more of that, Okay. So this is the thing. Okay. They're going to put pressure on you. And this is a tactic. This is a well-known tactic for you to give a number that prices yourself out of the competition. Okay. Because if you have to give one single number, you are conflicted. If you choose a number that is too low, then the job no longer becomes worth it for you. If you give a number that's too high, then you have eliminated yourself from the running. So this is a dilemma. Now, there's no way to know what the magic number is. Okay, you don't have that information, and they're asking you to guess a number. Okay. Now, as I've said before in my YouTube channel, the reason they're asking this question in the first place is because, first of all, they're trying to eliminate people. But secondly, they honestly have absolutely no idea what you're worth. Okay, this is the reality. They have no idea what you're worth. They just met you. You're a stranger. And, you could say, the jobs you've had, but they, in the same way that you don't know the details of this job, they don't know the details of your previous work. Okay, they don't know how much responsibility you've had, how valuable an employee you are. They don't know any of the details about you. And in order to overcome that, what they're doing is they're going to value you based on the amount of money that you ask for. So if you ask for minimum wage, they're going to come to the conclusion that, oh, you're worth minimum wage. You're a minimum wage employee. Okay, that's the problem with this. Now, what is the point of going to school, getting lots of work experience, learning a lot of skills, just to be bullied into saying, oh, I'd be happy with minimum wage, when that's not the case? There are people that have no experience that are worth minimum wage, that have no education that are worth minimum wage. I'm assuming Mr. Anderson has some work experience and some education and some skills, right? So they're trying to bully you into giving a low answer well below your value, okay? And what they're going to do is that if you do give a number and you haven't eliminated yourself from the running because the number was too high, what they're going to do is, if they select you, they're going to offer you essentially the number that you said you needed. Sometimes a little bit higher, sometimes a little bit lower, depending on the industry, the company, the country you're in, the economic conditions. Okay, but it's going to be locked off the number you give them. Okay, the thing is, you don't want to give a number. That's the whole basis of this. At the very least, you're going to give a range. Okay, give a range. Do not give a number, give a range. That's where this is going, okay? You need to stick to your guns on this, okay? You need to say, look, based on what I know about this position, and, even though it's missing quite a bit of detail here, all I can tell you is that my expectations would be in the range of anywhere between this number to this number, okay? And then give two reasonable numbers, one on the very low side and one on the very high side. Okay? That's how this works. Don't let them bully you into giving a number. And the way to do that, as I said, is don't just say, I refuse to do it, because that sends some red flags. Okay? It's just to say, look, I'd love to give you a number, but I can't. I'd be pulling a number out of the air. It wouldn't have any meaning. Okay? So the best I can give you is that at this point, what I know about this position and this organization is it would be anywhere between this number and that number. Anywhere between, like if you're doing this in dollars, it would be, I don't know, anywhere between 40,000 and 68,000. Okay, that's the best I can do right now. Hope that makes sense. And if they come back and say that's good enough, I mean, that's not a reasonable position. You understand that, okay? If somebody, like for example, if I approached you on the street and says, "Hey, I'd like to offer you a job working in a warehouse," and you say, "Oh, okay, what does it pay?" And you say, "Well, I don't know. How much do you need?" And it's like, "Well, what am I doing? Like what warehouse? What do I have to do? Is this organized crime? Is this what is this?" Right? And they say, like, "Well, we're not going to tell you, but we need you to give a number." I mean, it's a completely unreasonable thing to ask of somebody, and then demand that they stick to that number. That's ridiculous. Okay, everybody knows this. The recruiters know this. They know exactly what they're doing to you. It's a tactic. Okay. So if you're afraid of this process and you're afraid of the pressure that they put on, rehearse that answer. Okay. Rehearse the 3-stage answer, which is number 1. I can't give you a number at the moment. I don't know enough details. I'd have to know more details before I could give you a number. If that doesn't work, you say, well, what is the salary range for this position? What is the range? If you could give me that, that'll be a good starting point. Whatever they say is the range, you say, that's fine, right? You say whatever you got to say that's not an outright lie that gets you to the point where they give you an offer. And if they don't give you an offer letter, then none of this matters, okay? So you're trying to get to the offer letter stage, right? When they give you an offer, that's when you have some leverage, you have some bargaining power to actually ask for something, okay? That's how this process works. Until they give you an offer, you have absolutely no power to be able to ask for anything, because what they'll do is they'll say, well, no deal. And then they will eliminate you and go with another candidate that hasn't made any requests or demands. Okay, that's how this works. Okay, so that's basically the answer that I would give to this. Now I think I read out the last part of this. Yeah, they refrain from saying the info is highly confidential and against company rules. Then how do I know that they are valuing their new hire correctly? It's utter vandalism. Yes, it is. They are following a well-known tactic to get people for cheap. And the people that do this think they're doing the right thing. In some industries, you can justify this. In other industries, you can't. Because ultimately, in most situations, this is self-defeating. Ultimately, if you end up getting a valuable person for a ridiculously low amount of money, it won't last. The person will not be a good employee. They will regard the job as temporary. They will be looking for another job while they're working there. And as soon as they get something better, they're out of there. So, I mean, it's ultimately self-defeating. Unfortunately, great companies don't do this. They want to actually satisfy somebody's salary expectations and pay them something that they are reasonably happy with. Or if not salary expectations, their compensation package will include things that make them happy. Okay. So they might not be able to pay you an astronomical high amount of money, but they might make up for it by giving you flexible hours, allowing you to work remotely, giving you extra vacation, giving you all kinds of benefits and this kind of thing. Okay. So hopefully that makes sense. So thank you to Mr. Anderson, or as I've always known him, Neo, for sending in this question. That's an intelligent question. You are definitely not the only person that's struggling with this. And this is a well-known tactic used by all organizations, good and bad, but really taken to an extreme in bad organizations when they're recruiting. Okay, so it's okay. Just stay strong and stick to your guns. You don't have to confront them on this. You just explain that, I'm sorry, I can't, And if you're wondering how you're supposed to get a good salary at the end of the game, as I said, you wait until they give you an offer. If you never get an offer for the job, if they don't select you, none of this matters. If they do give you an offer, it's at that point that you have some negotiating ability. You're in a position to start asking for a couple of things. If it's not a big deal, if they can easily do it, they'll do it, right? Okay, because you're the one they want, and they don't want to have to go to their number 2, and they don't want to have to start all over again. Okay, so that's what I have to say when it comes to how to negotiate salary. So hopefully that makes sense, okay? Now, we're going to get to another question. I just want to say that if you really want the lowdown on this, how everything works, I have a course called Get Hired. It's linked. You'll find the link in the description box for this video. And that's where I walk you through absolutely everything you need to know to get a job. There's a couple of different vectors, different ways of getting a job. And I give you ways that are very promising, where you don't go up against a lot of competition. And these are the good jobs. And if you get these jobs, the chances of you being happy in the job go up considerably because you are working for the person that hired you, and they hired you because they believe in you. And that's the foundation of a great working relationship between a boss and their subordinate. So check out that course. If you are having some issues in your job search campaign and you're running into some problems and you don't know what to do, check out that course. I walk you through everything in a very systematic way, and it can lead you to a lifelong, successful career of employing some of these techniques. Okay, so moving on. We are going to do the second question that someone has sent in. One of my amazing viewers. This is from an individual, and I'm probably going to mispronounce their name, but it's Theo Zomberg. S-Z-O-M, Zom, B-O-R-G, Zomborg. Theo Zomborg. Anyway, however you pronounce your name, I think you're awesome. You're obviously a highly intelligent person with impeccable taste. So Theo Zomberg says, "Hi, Bill. Can you do a video on how to negotiate a flexible working hour without risking being eliminated from the interview? Thank you." Excellent question, Theo. This ties in with a lot of the concepts I was just talking about when negotiating salary, okay? Because when you're negotiating salary or you're negotiating flexible working hours, you're following the same principles, okay? Now, the bottom line, once again, that you got to remember, if you're negotiating flexible working hours or anything else for that matter, is, like I said, the only time you can really do this is when they have made you an offer, okay? It is an illusion to think that you can really demand anything before they've actually selected you, okay? So if you're asking about, like, at what point in the job interview process you can ask for this and basically demand it, there is no point, okay? You have to get through the interview process, and they have to make you an offer. So the goal of the interview process is to get to an offer, okay? So think of it strategically. The whole point of an application is to get them to give you an interview. And the whole point of an interview is to move on to the next stage, whether that's a second interview or it's an offer, okay? Now, the point of the goal of the offer is for you to then get what you want, okay, to make it worthwhile for you. So that's how you look at this process. The purpose of every stage of this hiring process is to get to the next stage of the process. When you're at the beginning, when you're filling in your application, don't start thinking about, like, well, I'm going to need flexible hours and I'm going to need a high salary. Don't think about that yet. You're thinking about the end of the process. That's incorrect. You got to think only about how to get to the next stage of the process, which is for them to give you an interview, okay? So when you're in the interview, the purpose of the interview, or the series of interviews, depending what their process is to get them to fall in love with you, to want to pick you, okay? And the way you're going to do that is by being the answer to all their hopes and dreams. You're not going to be the candidate that demands this and says, well, I'm going to need this, I'm going to need that, and I don't like these rules that you have, I'm going to need those changed. No, they're not going to bow to any of that. They're going to eliminate that candidate, and they're going to select a candidate that doesn't have all those wants, wills, and needs. Okay, that's how this works. Okay, so number one, get through the interview process, not demanding anything, not asking for anything special. Just say it's fine, it's fine, it's fine, it's fine. Okay. And then when you get the offer, now you know that they're listening. At this point, they're actually going to listen to you. Okay. So you've got the offer. If the offer never comes, you don't have to worry about any of this. If the offer does come, now is your chance. Okay. Now let's talk about the obvious, the elephant in the room here, the obvious question. Why should they give you anything? Right? Well, at this point, as far as they're concerned, from their perspective, they have concluded their job search. It cost a lot of money. It took a lot of work, posting jobs, interviewing people. It took a lot of everybody's time sitting in interviews, reviewing applications, et cetera, doing background checks, blah, 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 blah. They've done all that work, and now they've arrived at the end. They've selected you. So in their minds, this process is winding down. We've made our selection. We're assuming they're just going to accept, and we're done. Okay, so that's the perspective from their point of view. Okay, now if you come back from an offer letter, they send you the offer letter, and you take your time to read it, right? And you come back to them and you say, yeah, this is great. I'm very excited. I see all the things you're offering and all the conditions, and that's all fine. Absolutely no problem whatsoever. I just need you to change this one little thing here, and then I will sign it immediately and I can start immediately. Okay. Now, if you respond that way, that's showing a couple of things. That's showing, okay, number one, you're still the candidate. You're very excited. You're expressing your appreciation. You're expressing your enthusiasm. You're very, you're grateful to them. You have one tiny little modification, but it shouldn't be a big deal. And then if they can do that, then it's smooth sailing. Then I start immediately. I sign it immediately. Everything's cool. Objective achieved, right? So you're making it very easy for them. You're not turning around and saying, I've got a problem with this, and I got a problem with that, and this is a problem, and I need 3 weeks to read it, and nothing like that. You're their friend. You just have this one very little simple request. And chances are, in the vast majority of situations, employers will just say yes. Sure, whatever. Assuming you're not asking for something completely unreasonable, completely out to lunch, something they can't deliver on, okay? If it's something they can, you got it. For example, if the salary range turned out that they paid people in that role anywhere from $50,000 to $100,000, they offered you $60,000, and at the offer stage, when they gave you an offer letter, it says, here, congratulations, we're prepared to enter into an employment contract with you. This will be your job, and we're going to pay you $60,000. Okay, so the range was 50 to 100. They're going to pay you 60. And you turn around and say, okay, everything's cool. No problem with vacation. No problem with benefits. No problem with working hours. No problem with working conditions. No problem with start date. Absolutely nothing. All these other things that you wanted me to supply. No problem. Just if you could change that number to 68, I could start immediately. We got a deal. That's my only request. Other than that, it looks absolutely perfect. Now the range went up to 100. They could pay up to 100, but you're asking for 68 instead of 60. Most of the time they'll be like, sure, yeah, fine. Now sometimes what they'll do is they will call your bluff. They'll say, well, we don't really know if we can, but sign it anyway, right? That's a standard tactic. That's usually a bureaucrat's response, because bureaucrats are, they can't conceive of anyone not following the procedure. So we sent you an offer, so it's only logical that you would sign it and return it to us, right? And you'd say, okay, well, I'll get back to you. That's the standard response. You end the conversation. You say, okay, no problem. I'll get back to you. And that's usually code. That will be taken as code for, I'm probably not going to go along with this. It's a bluff. Okay. Now, remember, the reason you're doing this is because I'm assuming that this thing you're asking for, flexible working hours or salary or whatever it is important. Okay. It is important to you. You have to be willing to bluff a little bit. If you're so desperate for a job that you can't even try this, then, you really don't have any options. If you're absolutely desperate, you have no options. It's just that simple. Negotiation is about having options. Okay. So, but the reason I recommend this is because in the vast majority of situations, if you're asking for something reasonable and you've done it right, you're very positive about the whole thing, you're very accommodating, just one little teeny tiny detail, and then bam, everything's perfect. I sign, I start, I'll be happy to start. Usually people will just say, okay, fine. Okay. So if you're asking for flexible working hours, if that's even possible, okay, and it's something the company can give you, then that would follow the same trend. This is how you do it. This is when you do it. And this is why you do it. Okay. Now be aware that flexible working hours, okay, if that's what you're asking for, some positions, it might not be possible. Okay. Sometimes things just have to happen at a certain time. End of story. Okay. Security guards know what I'm talking about. Couriers know what I'm talking about a million different jobs. You guys know what I'm talking about. You can't just do the job when you want to do it. You have to do it when they want you to do it. Okay. So if it's possible to do, and they know it's possible to do this, that's the other key question. You can ask for it under these circumstances. Okay. Now, the reason why this carries weight, okay, here's another concept for you. The reason why this carries weight and puts the pressure on them is because, as I said, they've already invested the money and the time and the effort into finding somebody. And as far as they're concerned, it's done. If you now turn around and signal that, well, I got this little thing I want, and they're going to give you an argument over it, and you could possibly walk and not sign the offer letter as is, because they didn't give you this little teeny tiny thing that's reasonable, then that would mean that either they would have to, first of all, they're going to have to reopen the process. So more time, more money, more effort. Managers don't like that. And I speak from experience here. Okay. I thought we had this in the bag. What happened? It also reflects badly on the recruiter. If the company hired an external recruitment and selection company to find candidates and filter them, it's going to reflect badly on that recruitment company. Okay, I thought you gave me a good candidate here. What is this? The candidate backs out, right? It's a reflection on them. Maybe they didn't scrutinize their candidates as thoroughly as they should have. Okay, so the reason why you negotiating at this point carries weight is because if, for whatever reason, they felt that you would walk away from it, okay, in most situations, that means they have to reopen this hiring campaign. That means they have to either go to their number 2 choice, who they don't really want to do because you were the number 1. They would rather work with you, right? Sometimes it may not be possible to go back to their number 2. They've already told the number 2 you were eliminated, and you never know, that candidate might be gone, right? That's sometimes what happens. Or it's very embarrassing approaching them saying, yes, I told you were not good enough, but it turns out that you are, or they have to canvass more applicants. So they have to start again, post the job, get applicants, filter them, interview them, refine them, check references, check credit, check background, whatever, and then make a decision. They don't want to do that. Trust me, they would rather give you the thing that you're asking for if it's reasonable and it's a little thing, right? So that's why you have power to do this at the offer stage, okay? Now, final thing I want to mention about this is that in the last couple of years, things have changed a little bit, okay? And I mean that literally, a little bit, okay? There's co/vid, there's the Great Resignation, and, that has created some instability in some industries, in some regions, okay? And at the moment, there is a shortage of labor for certain jobs in certain industries in certain places. And if that affects you, this process might be a bit different. They might be a little more amenable to giving you whatever you want within reason. You'll have more freedom to ask for things, and they'll feel the pressure to just give it to you and move on. Okay, so that works in your favor. If you're doing this right now, you might be able to get away with stuff that normally you wouldn't. You might be able to demand things that normally they wouldn't entertain. And flexible working hours, depending on the type of job, this is the time to ask for that. If it is possible to do that for your job, then this is the time to do it, because not only are people feeling the crunch in certain situations for a demand for labor, but also it has been shown in a very in-your-face kind of way to the entire world that a lot of jobs can be done remotely, and you can have flexible working hours, which is technically called flex time. You can do that and get away with it, and it's a thing. Okay, so that's what I'll leave you with. Because of that, this has never been, everything I've talked about, demanding flexible working hours or a slightly higher salary, that has never been more possible than it is right now for some situations. Okay, so special thanks to Theo Zomborg for sending this in. You are awesome. Thank you so much for your intelligent question. I know that you're not alone and you're not the only one that's wondering this, especially now. So thank you very much. I hope that was informative. You guys are awesome. Don't forget to subscribe to both my YouTube channels. I have The Company's Expert and The Company's Expert 2. So don't forget to subscribe to both of those for videos on how to get a job, how to pass interviews, how to discover job opportunities, and how to start a company and lead it to success. And also on my main channel, you can join as a member if you want extra videos. You get 50% more videos, an extra video every week. And also, if you're into Patreon and you're on Patreon, or for my viewers in the UK, Patreon, I have a Patreon site. So feel free to support this channel there. All the support that I get there, all the funds, I channel it directly into getting better equipment so I can do more videos and do better quality videos. So thank you very much. Have yourselves a great week, and I will see you on the next episode. Take care.